Every Assassin's Creed game offered us something we genuinely had fun playing. AC2 had great parkour, AC3 had satisfying combat, and AC4 put a prime focus on naval gameplay. But there's always a second side, the worst side. So the question isn't what's the best part of each game, it's what's the worst side activity in every single one of them. Keep watching because we're going through every AC game and breaking down the worst side activity in each one of them. Speaking of the worst, you know what's the worst thing a gamer can experience? It's having your pockets empty right when a game drops. Like waiting a decade for that one title only to find out that the prize is completely out of your league. And that, lads, is where Eneba comes in. Because this video is sponsored by Eneba. It's basically a digital marketplace where you can grab game keys, gift cards, and even subscriptions all at discounted prices. They've got games for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, and the best part is, it's instant delivery, which means no waiting around for hours. And since it's a marketplace, you can compare different sellers and pick the best deal out of the bunch, which is honestly a big W in the community. So if you're planning to pick up a new Assassin's Creed game, check out the link in the description and the about section to make sure you don't miss out. Well, Assassin's Creed 1 had a lot to offer, but much of it was bland, repetitive, and very time-consuming to the point where it all felt like one massive checklist. Almost all side activities, let alone the story, were based on a template. A kind of formula where you had to do the same thing again and again just to achieve synchronization. But cutting straight to the point, what is the worst side activity in AC1? There are a plenty to choose from, but speaking from personal experience, it's none other than those darn flags. Yes, the game had not 50, not 100, but a total of 400 flags stretched across all 4 to 5 maps that we could explore. And their number isn't the only problem, it's how scattered and hard to get they are. Sometimes you won't even know how to reach them unless you quickly search to see if that flag is locked behind a story wall. And you know what the worst part is? You don't get any outfit, any buff, or any sort of equipment in return. Just a petty achievement that increases your gamer score and grants you platinum. That's it. Hours worth of effort that gives you absolutely nothing as a reward. But hey, this is just the start, because our boy Ezio also had his fair share of terrible activities, which we're about to get into right now. This game gets a lot of hate for the inclusion of 100 feathers that Ezio collects in honor of his younger brother. They were so hated by the fans that even in another Ubisoft title, Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, there's a quip about it. But if you think this is the worst activity we're considering, then you're wrong, my friend. Because at least this one has meaning in the main story. It's canon and it even gives you a cape, which might be useless but it's still a reward. But the activity we actually consider the worst based on our experience isn't the delivery contracts, races, or even the beta missions. It's the assassination contracts. Yes, you might troll me for this in the comments, but I had a rough time with these. They just wouldn't end. The game doesn't tell you how many there are in each city and whether you're completing them during the main story or after it. The total number isn't defined, and some of them even unlock after certain missions. And it creates this constant feeling of uncertainty, like you're second guessing your own progress. And not gonna lie, they were fun, 100%, but they weren't structured, and that's what made them the worst side activity for me at least. But the next game we'll talk about, Brotherhood, spiced things up by a mile when it came to this. In Brotherhood, thankfully, a lot of the things actually became fun to do. The previous stuff did carry over, like contracts, flags, feathers, but it didn't feel like that much of a big deal as compared to before. But why was that? Was it because they were easier? Maybe. But what I like to think is that it felt that way because of something else entirely. Instead of just slapping 100 flags, feathers, or contracts, Ubisoft had a brilliant idea to increase playtime. So they pulled a big brain move and introduced guild challenges. Not just one, but 3 different types of challenges. And man, those were a pain in the ass. Not because they were harder, but because they were so time consuming. You had one set for the Courtesan Guild, one for the Thieves Guild, and one for the Mercenaries. Each packed with a tedious objective like performing a leap of faith 40 times or hijacking a guard's horse 10 times again and again and again. Like, really, dude? I'm not doing all that without getting fed up. Sure, some of them gave insanely overpowered rewards, which at least made them somewhat worthwhile. But that doesn't change the fact that I was completely burned out by the end of it. Now, let's see what Revelations had waiting for us on the torture plate. I'm sure it wasn't any more forgiving. Revelations said goodbye to a lot of good things in the franchise. like our boy Ezio, his life, the OG gameplay, and structure. Yeah, some of the worst things too. And as you'd expect, just like AC2 and Brotherhood, it backported a lot of the older activities, removed some, and added new ones as well. But if you think I'm about to point out Den Defense, then you're wrong, my guy. No doubt it's one of the worst, but at least it was familiar. The ones that really had me fighting for my life were the Desmond memories on Animus Island. Sure, they were optional, but that's literally the whole point of this video, right? And they're not just bad, they're a different level of bad. First of all, just to access all of them, you have to collect 50 Animus fragments, which is already a pain. And once you do unlock them and start completing them one by one, here's where it gets worse. The entire gameplay structure is annoying. You're basically playing a first-person Portal knockoff simulator with the clunkiest controls imaginable. The level design? It's trash. Lasers, disappearing platforms, random obstacles, each level tougher than the last. And if you actually manage to finish them, then you're either insanely skilled or you have the patience of a monk. Because these things genuinely test you. AC3 without any doubt integrated a lot of things to improve the gameplay, the combat, and to some extent the overall structure. It offered a massive amount of content for us to chase and complete. Some of it was amazing and some of it was clearly just there to stretch the playtime. And speaking of playtime, we already made a dedicated video on how long does it take to beat every Assassin's Creed, so you can check that out easily. But coming back to the topic, there are quite a few side activities that I personally didn't enjoy. Those include the never-ending frontiersman challenges, the homestead missions, and they could easily be considered the worst. But here's the fun part, they're not. The actual worst ones are those damn minigames that would take a century to complete. Just like Brotherhood, this game has a Thieves Guild, and the challenges require you not only to finish these games but to master them by winning a bet of £500. And these games are so difficult that after a few losses, you genuinely feel like smashing your PC. It took me more than 2 or 3 days to finally get through them after constant failures and retries. But man, the feeling I got after completing them? Unreal. Still, that doesn't magically make these activities easy or fun. Thankfully, Black Flag toned things down a bit, but the real question is, by how much? Let's see for ourselves. To many, including us, Assassin's Creed 4 was a much easier title compared to AC3 and most of the other games. Its combat, gameplay, and even the story felt like a walk in the park. And it's one of the many reasons why I managed to achieve 100% synchronization in Black Flag more than 6 different times. For me personally, there isn't really any activity that gave me a serious hard time, as you can pretty much breeze through all of them easily. But if we narrow it down to the ones that really made me say, what the hell, man? Then the only name that comes into my mind is the Smuggler Dens. Here's why. They're straightforward on paper, but their structure and completion time are an absolute pain. First, you dive into the water and swim all the way to the den, dealing with shark attacks, tight spaces, and constantly running out of breath. And even when you manage to get through all of that, you still have to search for chests, and if you're aiming for 100% completion, then you also need to grab every fragment and loot the chests. That's where it becomes annoying. The dens are cluttered, and some areas are way too dark, and it's incredibly easy to miss something. And if by any chance you do miss something, your only option is to redo the entire thing from scratch. Honestly, it really tests your patience. Aside from that, the game is an absolute blast to complete. And as expected, some people might disagree with my pick and say Kenway's fleet is the hardest, but it's not mandatory for anything major, so I'll let that slide. Now, Rogue is basically 99% Black Flag. Let's see what they managed to sneak in even worse. Like I said, Rogue's worst activity isn't because of the process, it's because of the reward. Cutting all the bullshit, the game asks you to solve all the native pillars scattered across the map, and in return, you collect these totem-like artifacts. Up until that point, it's fine. The grind feels reasonable because, after all, you're expecting some badass armor at the end, right? But you know what we actually got? This. People love to hate in the mine armor from Black Flag, but at least that one had a unique ability to deflect bullets, no matter how bad it looked. This one, not only did it look bad, but it didn't even offer anything special. Most of Rogue's other activities are nearly identical to Black Flag with a few minor differences, but none of them really gave me a hard time. Even the other armors looked good enough to make the grind feel worth it. But this one in particular, climbing mountains, solving puzzles, going out of your way across the map, all that effort just to unlock this shit? It might not be the worst in terms of difficulty, but in terms of reward, it definitely crosses the line. And if you think that's disappointing, just wait, because Unity, it made us scratch our heads for a completely different reason. In Unity, we got one of the best representations of an assassin and his methods, with gameplay that's still praised to this day. but at launch, it definitely wasn't received the same way. People hated it, and aside from the bugs and glitches, one of the biggest reasons I personally didn't like it was because of the side activities. The game had one of the worst collections of side content ever featured in an AC title. But if I had to pinpoint the absolute worst, it's definitely the Nostradamus Enigmas, and this is where I fully agree with almost every AC fan out there. These weren't supposed to be your usual generic side missions, they were supposed to be fun, mystery-solving activities that rewarded you with the armor of Thomas de Carnelon, better known as the black version of Altair's outfit. And to be fair, the reward? It's amazing. Even though it's just cosmetic, it's easily one of the best looking armors in the game. But the activity itself? Total nightmare. You genuinely cannot complete this without using a YouTube guide or some kind of external help unless you're built differently. The symbols are placed in the most random locations imaginable, and they're not just one set you're dealing with, but multiple sets scattered across the map. And even after collecting them all, you're still not done. You have to solve this massive final puzzle that demands more brain power than you ever planned on using in an Assassin's Creed game. And only then, you finally get your armor. But I have only one question.
Why? 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 Why?
The classic Victorian London setting, the game many people still call the last true Assassin's Creed. But we're not here for that debate. We're here to talk about the worst side activity it had to offer. Now look, Syndicate was actually fun when it came to side content. A lot of it tied into the main story and even gave us deeper insight into the protagonists and their personalities. But on the flip side, it also had some seriously repetitive conquest activities. Not all of them were terrible, except for the ones that were basically infinite. And I'm talking about Night of Winer's associate activity. Yes, literally infinite. There was no real end to them. They were scattered almost everywhere on the map and required what felt like hundreds of missions just to progress far enough to unlock your precious reward, the Mars pistol, which is considered the best pistol in the game. The problem? They pop up randomly, give you very little experience, and then show up again like nothing happened. The only decent thing about them is that they hand out a good chunk of money. Other than that, it's a pure grind fest that can genuinely make you want to quit out of frustration. And now, since we're done with the original saga, we're stepping into the era of Assassin's Creed that had the most side content of all. The RPG era. And trust me, along with the quantity came some of the absolute worst activities in the franchise. Let's see what they are. Starting with Origins, it redefined Assassin's Creed forever with a template that is still being followed today. We praise it a lot for its perfect execution in almost everything related to the story and characters. On the gameplay side, it had a different structure than most, as it had question marks for undiscovered locations, side quests, and main quests. For the side content, now I didn't have to do any collection like the older games, as the map was way bigger. Because of which your pick becomes easy, and is from the side quest category. The question is, which side quest? The answer is the one that focuses on murder investigations, and that too being the quest titled Taste of Her Sting. In this quest, we encounter a murder mystery that spans across the entire map and is honestly the most boring and trashy part of the game. All you do is analyze clues on some abandoned locations and that's it. But those clues themselves are frustrating enough to find on your own. Some are hidden underwater and some are present on pillars. All in all, the thing which makes this quest worse is how it's executed, and it's fair to say that it was all just added to fill locations with no side quests, and that too in a rush. But that was for Origins. Are you guys ready for Odyssey? As the idea for this video came from Odyssey's activities, so see for yourself. When it comes to Odyssey, the checklist for the worst activities is long, and I mean long. This game has a lot of content, like a lot, and while some of it is great, a huge chunk of it gave me and many other players a serious headache. Now the definition of worst here is similar to what I said about Rogue. These activities aren't hard or impossible. They're repetitive, and that repetition slowly messes with your brain. Almost every side activity follows that same formula, but if I had to name one specifically, it's the side quest titled Creating Opportunity. Sounds simple, right? And that's exactly the problem. The whole quest revolves around creating opportunities to get what you want. Straightforward on paper, but the task it gives you? Tedious. You're required to kill Spartan polemarchs who are only found inside forts over and over again to collect their seals. Those of you who've played the game already know what I'm talking about, and those of you who haven't are probably thinking, that sounds easy. But hear me out. Once you kill a polemarch, they don't just instantly respawn. You have to wait for them or do specific tricks to reset the area, and even that takes time. And if that wasn't annoying enough, there's a similar side quest from the Spartans targeting the Athenians. So imagine doing all the work just to do it all over again. It absolutely sucks. Valhalla took the formula introduced in Origins and pushed further in Odyssey by toning down the RPG elements and bringing in a more flexible system. It required less grinding, and side quests were shorter and more fun compared to Odyssey. Combat felt smoother, animations looked better, and it generally improved in many areas. Most of the hate it gets is because of its massive size and scale, but that's not the only issue. There's something else in Valhalla that makes a lot of players lose their minds, and that's the regional side activities you need to complete for 100% completion. We're talking about drinking contests, flighting, and then there's the worst of them all, the Cairn Stones. Now, what are they? They're basically a stone balancing minigame that uses actual physics to feel more realistic. And it's hand down the hardest minigame in the game and the most frustrating one too. The stones are ridiculously delicate, and one tiny miscalculation, one slight shift in angle, and the entire structure collapses. And just like that, you're staring at the screen in pure frustration. I genuinely don't know what Ubisoft was thinking with this, because it doesn't get easier. It gets harder the more regions you unlock. And I swear, if they had put this much effort into improving cloud physics, the game would have been a solid 10 on 10 for me. Now comes Mirage, the title that promised to bring back everything the original Assassin's Creed stood for. And to be fair, it did live up to that promise, but only to some extent. I actually liked it. It took elements from multiple games and crafted a shorter, more focused experience that almost anyone could enjoy. But some ideas, they were better left out than poorly executed. And I'm talking about the mysterious shards. The shards you need to unlock the Isu armor, and of course you have to pickpocket them. Now again, you might say, they're easy Faxx, why make a big deal out of it? Well, that's not exactly true. While exploring, these shards don't always properly show up on the map, and sometimes you can spend hours roaming around before finally spotting one. And what you do then? The target carrying it is usually patrolling in the most inconvenient way possible. And if you played this on permadeath, you already know the stress level this brings. So you're forced to pickpocket them carefully, and even that isn't as simple as it sounds. In short, the whole activity feels bugged, glitched, or just straight up broken in more than one way. Thankfully, the only saving grace is the number, and there are just 6 shards in total. So at least you're not grinding for dozens of hours. Small mercies, I guess. Shadows, the only AC game which was literally cancelled by the entire world before launch, yet still managed to gain sales, and it's a rare case. It offers some of the best environments in Assassin's Creed ever, featuring different seasons, environments, and gameplay features. But did it also impress us the same way when it came to its content? The answer isn't straight, it's complicated, and it's sadly no. It had multiple activities that we could do, like meditation, collecting scrolls, and synchronizing viewpoints. But the worst one out of them all, in my humble opinion, is Kata, as it is exclusive to Yasuke. In this activity, you're given some buttons to press to synchronize with Yasuke's animation, and it becomes harder and tougher with every round, as it requires sharper reflexes to press each button at the right time to execute it perfectly. And if you fail it, then you're met with a restart prompt to restart that particular round. It's a messy activity that tests your reflexes and how well you react to intense situations. And for a guy like me, it's the worst thing any dev can include in his game. And that's it for today's video. I hope this list at least entertained you, as it was made with personal experiences and the things I personally hated in the name of side activities. Anyway, if you think I missed something or there's something that you would have included, then make sure to let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care and goodbye.